If you want to pass the Salesforce Administrator Certification Exam, then you need to watch this video. I'm going to show you exactly what you need to know for the very first section, configuration and setup. I'll walk you through each objective and the concepts and features that you must know if you're going to pass the Salesforce Admin Exam. We're going to be spending a lot of time in Salesforce, so get ready to dive in. More walkthroughs are coming, so make sure that you like and subscribe so you don't miss them. My name is Dave Massey and I'm the founder of Get4 Certified, a Salesforce training company that helps you get certified quickly and easily. I've helped over 30,000 students and I want to help you too. So let's get started. Configuration and setup is the very first section of the admin exam and it counts for a 20% of your overall score. It's one of the most, if not the most important parts of the admin cert, as a lot of the concepts and features you learn here, you'll be implementing day to day in your life as an admin. In fact, even if you want to become a consultant, a developer, or an architect, you need to know this stuff inside out, as it underpins everything in Salesforce. The first objective is describe the information found in the company settings. For example, company settings, fiscal year, business hours, currency management, and default settings. So what do you need to know for this objective? Well, let's take a look at a diagram that I mapped out earlier, and then we'll head into Salesforce and walk through each one. The first objective can be broken down into a couple of concepts. We have company information, business hours, holidays, language settings, fiscal year, currency management, and my domain. So you need to know what each of these are, what they do, and how to configure them. Let's head into Salesforce and take a closer look. So here we are in Salesforce and we want to head to setup. So we're going to select the gear icon and we're going to select setup. And then from here we have two different options of how we can get to company settings. We can either scroll down this side here where we can find them there, company settings, or if we go to the quick find search bar and we type in company settings, you'll see that we've also got them there. So let's start at the top and we're going to start with business hours. So business hours are used to tell Salesforce when your support team is available. They impact escalations and milestones, which we are going to talk about in the service and support applications section in another video. You can have multiple business hours, but one and only one must be set as the default. This is really handy if you're a global company and you have offices across the world. To create a new business hours, all you need to do is select new business hours, give it a name, set whether you want these business hours as the default, set if you want them active or not, the relevant time zone, and then you can actually configure the actual business hours themselves. So next we have public calendars and resources. Now these are used when you have a public calendar that all users can access. For example, you might have one for company events, team events, or employee leave. And then we have resources. And this is when you have company resources such as laptops, tabs, or even mobile phones, basically anything that is shared throughout the company. You can create them as a resource and then allow users to book or reserve them for set dates and times. And then next we have company information. Now this is a really important one, and it's one that you must know. On the left hand side of this page we have the company name or organization name, the primary contact, address details, fiscal year details, and if multiple currencies are activated. We'll talk more about fiscal year and multi-currency in a minute, but on the right hand side we have phone and fax details, and we also have the default locale, language, and time zone. Again, these are really important if you're an international company and you work across multiple countries. Then we have the data and file space of your Salesforce org. API requests, which are used with integrations, and an API just enables two systems to talk to each other by sending messages to a server asking for an API to provide a service or information. Now don't worry too much about APIs. You don't need to know much about them, just know that this is where you can monitor them. We then also have the org ID, which is the unique ID for your org, and it's really important where you're asking for support from Salesforce and you might need it in other situations as well. And then we have user licenses. Again, this is a really important section to understand, and it shows you the number of Salesforce licenses you have, how many are being used, and how many are left. We then have permission set licenses, we have feature set licenses, And we have usage-based entitlements. The easiest way that you can think of these licenses are that user licenses are assigned to users and they set the baseline features that a user can use. Permission set licenses are assigned to users to give them access to tools and permissions not included in their user license, and they can be quite granular. Then we have feature licenses, which are assigned to users to give them access to features that are not included in their user license. And then we also have usage-based entitlements, and these are limited resources that your organization can use on a periodic basis. So for example, API requests per month. Make sure you know this page inside out for your exam. You know what's on it and you have a good idea of where to find this information and what it means. Next, we have data protection and privacy. Now this is where you can control the data protection and privacy settings of your org. And then we have fiscal year. And with fiscal year, there are two types of fiscal year in Salesforce. You have the standard fiscal year, which is based on the Gregorian calendar and it runs for 12 months. You can then set the start date, and then you can also set whether the fiscal year is based on the ending month of that fiscal year or the starting month of that fiscal year. And then we have the custom fiscal year. And this is where you can use a template to help work with your org's fiscal year if it doesn't match a standard fiscal year. But beware though, once you enable custom fiscal years, you cannot disable them. It's really important to remember that. Once you enable custom fiscal years, you cannot disable them. And then we have holidays. Holidays are a bit like an extension of business hours, and you can set dates and times that your customer support is available. They impact entitlements and escalation rules and are used for holidays such as Christmas, Easter, or the 4th of July. Under holidays, we have language settings. Now this is where you can configure the languages available in your org. There are three types: end user, platform only, and fully supported languages. Fully supported languages can be used for all Salesforce features. End user languages have translations for field labels and pages, and then platform languages can be used with translations for customization and standard fields. And then the final part of company settings is my domain. Now this is important when it comes to the security of your org, and it allows you to set a custom domain URL, as well as a few other things, including preventing login from the standard login.salesforce.com website. And that's this first objective covered, company settings. Now let's take a look at the second one. Distinguish and understand the administration of declarative configuration of the user interface. For example, UI settings, app menu, list views, global actions, and the Lightning App Builder. In this objective, we focus on the user interface, so that's what the users see and interact with. There's quite a bit of configuration involved in this one, more than I can cover in this video, but I do cover this section and all the other sections in detail in the Salesforce Certified Administrator certification course. I'll include a link below. So what do you need to know for this one? Well, you need to know about anything app related, so that'll include the app menu, app manager, and the Lightning App Builder. You'll also need to know about list views, page layouts, actions, and the navigation bar. But let's head into Salesforce and take a closer look. And we're going to head to the front end of our Salesforce org, so I'll just close that down, and here we are in the front end. Now, what you see at the top here with opportunities, leads, tasks, files, accounts, etc., this is your navigation bar. It's much like your bookmark bar on your internet browser, and it allows for quick access for objects and records. It can be customized, so you can have pretty much anything that you want on there. To the left, we have the app launcher. This is sometimes referred to as a waffle because it looks like a waffle and it has 9 dots, apparently. If we select the app launcher, we're then given a list of the apps that we have access to. Sometimes the term app makes people a little nervous as it sounds more complicated than it is. An app in Salesforce is just a collection of items, such as objects that work together to serve a specific purpose. For example, if we open up this service app here, you'll see that our navigation bar has turned. It's changed into something a little bit different. It's got accounts, contacts, cases, reports, and dashboards. Now this is because this is more refined for anyone who is a customer support or a customer service worker, because they're not going to need access to opportunities, for example. Now if we switch that back and we switch it to the sales app, you'll see that this navigation bar changes again, and this time it has opportunities, leads, tasks, files, accounts, etc. Everything that you need to work with as a sales team. So how do you configure all this? Well, I'm glad that you asked. Let's head into Setup, and this time we're going to look for something a little different. Now, you can control apps through a number of different ways. The main three being the App Menu, the App Manager, and the Lightning App Builder. So if we go to the quick find search bar here and we type in App Menu, and let's open that up. Here we can configure the app menu, so we can control what is in the app menu. We can reorder the apps, so we can just drag them around like that to change how they appear, so the order that they're in. We can make them invisible, so we can hide them, or we can make them visible so we can show them. So that just allows us to configure really what the app menu shows. Now this is just purely for appearance purposes. For something more powerful, we want to go to the App Manager. So I'm going to open up the App Manager here just by typing in App Manager, and we'll just open that up. So in the App Manager, we have access to all of the apps that are in our Salesforce org, and we can come here to edit them if we want. So for example, if we want to edit the Lightning Sales app, we can just go to this drop down here and select Edit. And then from here, we can start customizing it. So we could look at the app details and branding, the app options, the utility items, the navigation items, and the profiles that are going to have access to this app. Now, this is part of the Lightning App Builder. And one thing to know about the Lightning App Builder is that you can create 3 things with the Lightning App Builder. You can create new apps or modify existing apps. You can create or modify existing home pages, and you can create or modify Lightning record pages, which we'll talk about again shortly. So this is quite a powerful way in which you can control how your users are using Salesforce. So how about we create a quick app just to show you how quick and easy it is, and to just take away any of those worries that you may have. So what we're going to do here is we're going to select New Lightning App, and then we're going to give our app a name. So for this, I'm just going to call it Get Force Certified. We then have the developer name there. So we've got the developer name, and then we need to put a description in there. So what we're going to do for description, we're just going to keep it nice and simple, and we're just going to say that it's a clear, concise, and comprehensive Salesforce training that gets you Salesforce certified quickly and easily. Next, we can add an image. So I'm just going to upload an image. Now I've already got one here, so it'll only take me 2 seconds. Perfect. And then we could set the primary color, so the primary color of our app. Now I'm just going to change this to a nice goldy yellow. So we'll go here, just move it a little bit that way, and we'll go with that. And I'm just going to pull it up here to make sure I get that right color. We can then configure a couple of other things. So we could use the app's image and color instead of the org's custom theme. So we'll set that as check. We'll hit next. And then we have a couple of options here for the navigation, as well as a few other things. So we have standard navigation and console navigation. Now, the main thing to know between these is that the standard navigation is what we've seen so far. So we've got the full navigation bar at the top, which has got the objects listed on it. With the console, that's slightly different. So that just kind of condenses them all into one bit, which we can look at, and that'll just open them up. I'll show you that in a second. But the best use for a console app is when you're in a fast-paced environment and you need to be able to work with multiple records at the same time. Now, we can also set up the supported form factors, the setup experience, and we can add a bit more, but I'm just going to leave that as it is. I'll hit next. I'm not going to add any utility items. I'll leave them as they are. And then we can configure our navigation items. So these are the items that we're going to get in our navigation bar. So I know that we're going to have home because we need a home page. We're then going to have leads as well. And then we'll put in a few more. So we'll put in accounts. We'll put in contacts. And then what we'll put in as well is we'll say opportunities. And of course, we need reports, and we also need dashboards as well. So let's just add them in there. Perfect, and we can add them on. And if we wanted to change the order of these, we could do here. So this is how we could change them, by pressing up or down. Or if we've got it enabled in the user interface settings, we can actually change them using the navigation bar as well. Now I'm just going to use next now, so we'll go through to the next bit, and we can set what profiles will have access to this app. Now I'm just going to set it as the system administrator, just purely because that's what our profile is. So I'll put that across there, and we'll save and finish. And there we are, we've created our very first app. So let's head back to the front end of Salesforce and take a look at how that looks. So here we are at the front end of Salesforce. We're going to click the app launcher and we're going to search for Salesforce Certified, which is the app that we've just created. We can open that up, and what you'll see is we've now got that nice yellow bar at the top, so that's different to the blue that we had, and we've got all the navigation items that we wanted. So creating a new app is really quick and easy to do, which is one of the power points of Salesforce. It's so quick and it's so easy just to set something up for your users. It's a really powerful tool. Now, I mentioned the console app before, so let me show you what that looks like. So this is a standard app, so you can see that we have this standard navigation at the top there. Whereas if we go here, and I'm just going to type in console, and we go to Sales Console, what you'll see is that navigation bar has changed, so it doesn't have a list of objects there. But what it does do is it has them down here instead. And the good thing about this is, say we open up an account, so I'll just go to all accounts here, we'll open up Burlington, you'll see that it opens up over here. And this is really good because if you're starting to work with multiple records and you perhaps need to keep flicking between stuff, you can do it easy here. And then when you start opening things for that Burlington Textiles account there, you can see it's actually opening them up as subtabs. So again, whatever I open up is showing there. So this is just one of the other ways that Salesforce makes it easier for users to work with it. So let's head back to our Salesforce Certified app and we'll just open that up. So now we're going to have a look at list views. So I'm just going to go to leads and I'm just going to go to all open leads. So what you see here there, what I'm changing, that is what's called a list view. So we're just getting a different list of records. Now lists can be configured in quite a number of ways. I mean, you could set up different filters on there. You could even add charts if you wanted to as well. And then if you wanted to change the actual columns, so the fields that you're seeing, you could just use the select fields to display. You can create new list views, you can clone them, you can rename them, you can delete them, and you can control who can actually use them as well. So make sure that you know list views inside out as well. Now let's take a look at one of our leads here. So I'm just going to dive into Bertha Boxer, and what we have here on the front end, this is what's known as the Lightning record page for leads. It's the interface that you see in front of you with all the sections such as activities, details and chatter. And if we select details, you'll see that we have all of the details of this lead record. The details that you see in this section here, these are specified by what the page layout is for the record, for lead records. Now, the best way to try and think about this is imagine it as a little bit like looking through a window. The Lightning record page is the overall structure. So that's where we have, say, the highlight panel up here. We have the different sections. We have the different components to it. And then the details, so the actual details of the record itself. This is like you're looking through the window and you're seeing the page layout. So remember that Lightning record page is the overall structure and the page layout is the details that you see here. So how do we edit this? Well, let's take a look. We're going to go to the gear icon again, and this time we're going to hit Edit Page. This is now going to open up the Lightning App Builder, and we did use this before, but we used it to actually create our app. The Lightning App Builder is a tool that you can use to create and customize apps, home pages, or record pages like we're doing here. And what I wanted to quickly show you is the page layout. So if we go to the Details tab here, and we select the details section here, you'll see that we now have these page layouts over on the right hand side. These can be customized in setup, so you can show the details that you want in the record. You can have multiple page layouts and assign them based on a number of factors, and what we also have is the option to turn on dynamic forms, which makes it even easier for us to control what we see on the page. But that is a conversation for another day. Now, before we leave this page, I just want to point out that on the left-hand side over here, we have various components. So these are also known as Lightning components. You can create your own, you can download more from the App Exchange. There's an awful lot you can do with them. And to add them is dead easy. You literally, all you need to do is drag it, drop it, put it on your page, and jobs are good and it's straight away there. So let's finish this objective off with a look at actions. So I'm just going to hit back here, and we're just going to leave this page. And where I want to draw your attention to are these buttons in the top right corner. We have Convert, Edit, and New Case. We can also select the drop down and we have even more here. Now these are called actions and they allow us to carry out a specific action when we need to. We also have global actions up here which you can find using the plus button or the plus icon in the top. Before we finish off this section, I do want to show you one more thing, the user interface settings. So to get to the user interface settings, we're just going to go back into setup. I'll just close the old setup down so you can see we're in a new one. And we're just going to type in the user inter. And if we scroll down to the bottom, we've got user interface settings. So that's the one that we want, the user interface. So if we open that up, you can see that we have a whole host of different options, different configuration that we can set for our user interface. Now, you want to spend your time and have a look through these and get a good feel and a good idea for what they are. You don't need to know exactly what each one does, but just make sure you have a really good understanding of them. A couple of ones that I like to point out to people are the enable collapsible sections. That's a really important one to know. Same as enable inline editing. And you've also got other ones such as disable navigation bar personalization in Lightning Experience. And that wraps up the second objective. Now, this is really high level as it literally takes hours to walk through each of these concepts and the configuration in detail. If you do want an in-depth walkthrough and course, then check out the link in the comments where I spend a couple of hours going through all of this. Now, let's talk about the third objective. Given a scenario, demonstrate the proper setup and maintenance of users. This one is much more simpler than the previous two, and it refers to knowing about user licenses, how to create new users, how to add multiple new users, freezing users, and deactivating users as well. Now we know that we can see user licenses under the company information page, but let's head back into Salesforce and let's take a look at managing users more. So what we're going to do is we're going to search for users in this quick find search bar over here, and you can see we have a couple of options here. We have permission set groups, permission sets, profiles, public groups, queues, roles, user management settings, and users. We're going to ignore the first few of them and we're going to focus on user management settings. Now, this is where you can configure a bit more about how your user management works. You can allow external users to deactivate their own account if you want. You can enhance profile user interface as well. And there's a few others that you can look at as well. And then we have users, and this is the bit that you really need to know. Within this, you can see that we can create new users. What we can do is we can create an individual new user, or we can add multiple users, so we can create multiple users at the same time. We can also reset passwords, and we can do quite a bit here. Now, the key point you want to remember here is you should know when you create one user versus creating multiple users. You need to understand the differences between creating one and creating multiple users, as well as knowing the limitations as well. Now, if we open up a user that isn't us, what you'll also see is that we have the ability to freeze a user. Now, this will just lock them out of the org, and it's useful when someone leaves a company and you need to remove their access. However, they're involved in automations that need reworking before you can deactivate them. We can also deactivate users by hitting edit and then just unchecking the active checkbox here, and this will deactivate that user. Now, we're not going to do that, we're just going to hit cancel. Now, it's really important that you understand the difference between freezing a user and deactivating a user, because depending on the situation, you may look at freezing or deactivating a user, but it all depends on the scenario. So make sure you understand the differences between freezing and deactivation. The next objective that we have is to explain the various organization security controls. For example, setup audit trail, login hours, session settings, and for this objective, you're going to need to know about the setup audit trail, login hours, login IP ranges, trusted IP ranges, session settings, password policies, and the security health check. So again, let's head into Salesforce and let's head back to setup. And where we're going to start here is with the audit trail. So we're going to go to the quick find search bar and we're just going to type in audit, and we'll see that we can view setup audit trail. So let's open that up and let's walk through what this shows. The setup audit trail shows the last 20 metadata changes that have been made to our org. Now, the easiest way to think of this is it's a record of any configuration changes that have been made to our org. We can export this so we can have a longer history of changes rather than just 20. We'll get a lot more. It's really useful when you have multiple admins or people working on a project, especially if something goes wrong and you're trying to figure out who or what has caused it. Now let's talk about login hours and login IP ranges. And to do that, we need to take a look at a profile. So I'm going to go to the quick find search bar and I'm going to type in profile. We'll open up profiles and I'm just going to open up the custom sales user profile, so the custom sales profile. And from here, we can get down to login IP ranges by scrolling, or the quickest way is if we just select login IP ranges there in the top left. So just to show you that, you've got a little hyperlink here. Select that, scroll up, and you can see we've got login hours and login IP ranges. So what are login hours and what are login IP ranges? Well, in a nutshell, login hours are used to prevent users with this profile from logging in outside of the designated hours set. So if we select edit here, you can see that we could set the times that the users with this profile should be able to log into our org. But let's hit cancel, let's hit back, and then if we go back down to login IP ranges, we can hit new there. And what we can do with login IP ranges is we can prevent users with this profile from logging in from an IP that isn't within this login IP range. We just need to set the start IP address and the end IP address. These are quite granular when it comes to controlling the access to your org. Now on the flip side, you can also whitelist IPs as trusted IP ranges, which means that when users log in from these IP addresses, there's no verification check. You would do this by heading across here, typing in network, opening up network access, and then you could actually set the trusted IP ranges. So for this objective, you're also going to need to know about password policies, session settings, and the security health check. So if we search for password policies here, we'll just type in password. We can open up password policies, and you can see that we have a number of settings in here. You'll find settings such as the password expiry time, minimum password length, as well as the minimum password complexity. Make sure that you understand these. For session settings, we're just going to go back into the quick find search bar, type in session, and you'll see that we can bring up session settings here. So once we open them up, you can see we've got quite a few settings here as well. Again, you're going to want to walk through these and just make sure that you understand them and you understand what they do. A couple of important ones you'll want to look at is the forced logout on session timeout, as well as like the logout page URL as well. There are a couple of good ones to be aware of. And then the final part of this objective is the security health check. So in the quick find search bar, we'll just type in health and you can open up the security health check. And from here, we're going to be given a score between 0 and 100%. The higher, the more secure your org is, so the better. And you can quickly fix any risks just using the fix risks there, or going down and using the edit button there as well. And that's this objective done. Now let's move on to a really important objective. This is just as important. In fact, it's probably more important than the company settings one. Given a user request scenario, apply the appropriate security controls based on the features and capabilities of the Salesforce sharing model. For example, public groups, org-wide defaults, sharing, roles, subordinates, hierarchy, report and dashboard folders. This really is a significant objective with lots of concepts, features and protocols to know and to understand. I'm going to walk you through what you need to know at a high level, but make sure that you spend plenty of time with more in-depth material so you really do understand it. I spend a lot of time in the Get Force Certified courses running through this objective because it's absolutely essential that you know it inside out, as it underpins a lot of Salesforce functionality. In this objective, you need to know a lot. You need to know about object access, record access, features such as org-wide defaults, roles and the role hierarchy, manual sharing, public groups, team sharing, sharing rules, report and dashboard sharing, and field level security. This is a biggie. Before we head into Salesforce, I want to show you something. This is a diagram from the Salesforce architects, and it shows the sharing architecture in Salesforce. The most important takeaway from this is that access starts off at its most restrictive, and then it's opened up through various features such as org-wide defaults, the role hierarchy, sharing rules, manual sharing, etc. So what do you need to know? Well, you need to know that profiles and permission sets set the baseline level of access that users have to Salesforce objects and records. We'll talk about profiles and permission sets in more detail in the next objective. Org-wide defaults set the baseline level of record access. So let's head into Salesforce and I'll show you what I mean. So we're already in setup here, and where we're going to go is to the quick find search bar, and we're going to type in sharing, and we're going to open up sharing settings. This is where you'll control the default access level of records to your users. If we hit edit, you can see that we can control the access for each object. And remember, an object is essentially a table and a record is a row of that table. So a lead record is just a record of the lead object. For leads, you can see that we have a few options. We have private, public read-only, public read-write, and public read-write transfer. Private means that the records are private, so only the record owner can see it. Public read-only means that all users in the org can see that record. Public read-write means that any user in the org can see and edit that record, and you can probably guess what public read-write transfer means. Now these settings can vary depending on the object. For example, if we go down to campaign and we open that up, you'll see that we have public full access, and if we go down to price book, you can see that that has different settings as well. So make sure that you understand what these are for each object, just so you have a good understanding of exactly what they are. If we scroll down as well, what you'll see is that we have some other settings here. We have standard report visibility, manual user record sharing, and manager groups as well. So again, just to understand what these are. But one thing that I do want to draw your attention to is this grant access using hierarchies. This is really important. So what does this actually do and what does it tie into? Well, it ties into the role hierarchy. So let's talk about that next. And what we're going to do is go to the quick find search bar. We're going to type in role, and we're just going to open up roles there. And we'll just hit set up roles. So this will give you a quick overview. You can see a couple of different examples. So again, you might want to have a look at this, but we're just going to hit set up roles. And we're going to hit expand all so we can see all of the roles here. Now, what I want to do here and what I want you to think of is I want you to think of this more as a data access hierarchy. So not an organizational structure hierarchy. So don't imagine it like it's the organization structure. Imagine it like it's the data access hierarchy. And that means that when you grant access using hierarchies, that access to those records will flow up through the role hierarchy. So it allows you to grant additional access automatically when it's needed. It's quite simple, but it's really powerful, and it's a great way to grant additional access, and it's important that you understand how it works. So, for example, if we had grant access using hierarchies and we had the opportunity object as private sharing, what would happen is, as long as that grant access using hierarchies was enabled, is any opportunity owned by the Western sales team would be accessible by the director because they're above them in the role hierarchy, and therefore it would be accessible by the VP of North America sales because they're above them, and then the SVP of sales and marketing because they're above them, all the way up to the CEO. So again, this is something you need to understand because it's a really good way to configure sharing in your org. Now let's talk about sharing rules. And to get to sharing rules, we're going to head back into the quick find search bar, and we're going to type in sharing and open up sharing settings. And what we need to do is we need to scroll down here, and you'll see that we have a list of sharing rules here. So what are sharing rules? Well, they allow you to automatically share records based on either a criteria that you set for the record or the owner of the record. Now make sure you understand the differences between the two. These are really useful when you want to share records that are owned by one user with another user automatically, or it could even be roles, or it could even be high priority cases or anything like that. So for example, if you have an outbound sales team and an inbound sales team, you may want opportunity records owned by the outbound sales team to be shared with the inbound sales team. You could use a sharing rule to do that. The other sharing mechanisms that you need to know and understand are public groups, manual sharing, and team sharing. Public groups are just groups of users, roles and subordinates, or other public groups, and they can be referenced in any other sharing feature such as sharing rules. It makes it easier to share with users that are not traditionally aligned. Manual sharing is when users share records one by one manually. It's the most granular level of sharing. And then teams allow the automatic sharing of records with account teams, opportunity teams, and case teams. They are really, really useful when you have a team that needs to be involved with escalated cases, for example. The last 2 points that you want to know and understand about are report and dashboard sharing and field level security, so make sure you take a good look at them. This is probably the toughest and most complex objective of this section, and you must be comfortable with it. Make sure that you build out each one multiple times, work your way through Trailhead, and take advantage of other resources that dive deeper into these concepts. So that leaves us with the very last objective. Given a scenario, determine the appropriate use of a custom profile or permission set using the various profile settings and permissions. So what do you need to know for this one? Well, you need to know about profiles, so that's both standard and custom profiles. You need to know about permission sets, permission set groups, and muting permission sets as well. So let's head into Salesforce and we'll take a closer look. We're going to go to setup where we already are, and then in the quick find search bar, we're going to type in profile, and we'll just open up profiles here. The key thing to remember here is that profiles set the baseline level of access and permissions for users, and each user can have one and only one profile. So we're going to open up the custom sales profile here, and if we scroll down here, you can see that we have an awful lot of settings here. Now, don't worry thinking that you need to know everything, because you don't. You just need to have a really good idea of what each one does, and you need to focus on a couple of key ones as well. And one of the ones that you do need to focus on are the permissions. So the code CRED permissions here, which stand for create, read, edit, and delete. So you need to make sure that you're familiar with these as well. So as I've mentioned, you have standard profiles, which come straight out of the box with Salesforce, and you have custom profiles, which are created by administrators. When you need to open up access more than a profile allows, you have a couple of options. You can either create another profile, so a custom profile, you can edit it if it's already a custom profile, or you can create a permission set. So let's take a look at permission sets now. And we're going to go to the quick find search bar, we're going to type in permission, and we're going to open up permission sets there. So what is a permission set? A permission set is a set of permissions that you can give to users to increase their permissions. So say the custom sales profile, which doesn't have the delete account permission, is assigned to all sales users, but one senior sales user needs the permission to delete accounts. You could actually create a custom profile just for that one user, but it's harder to manage in the long term. So what you would do is create a permission set that grants that permission, so the delete accounts. So to do that, we're just going to create a new permission set here, so we'll hit new. And then for the label, we're going to call this delete account. The API name we'll leave as it is, and we can give some more details in here. So we could set it as a session activated required permission set, which is a bit more advanced, so we're not going to cover that. And then you can select the type of user who will use this permission set, so what license they're going to have. You can select whatever license you want, or if you leave it as none, it means that anyone, so any license, so any user with any license can have this permission set. So we'll hit save there. And then what we need to do is we actually need to configure this permission set, because permission sets always start as blank. They don't have any preset permissions. What we need to do is we need to configure the permissions that we want them to grant. So in our case, we're going to select object settings, because that's what we want to work with. We want to work with object settings. We're going to select accounts, and then we're going to select edit. And from here, we're going to enable this delete permission. So what we're doing is we're creating a permission set that is going to grant the permission of deleting accounts, and we can just hit save. And then when it comes to actually assigning a permission set, it's dead easy. You can just click manage assignments, you'll add the assignment, then you select the user that you want to assign it to, and you hit next. And then you can actually set the expiration date for this. So if you didn't want this to be continuous, so you only wanted to grant it for a set amount of time, you could actually specify the expiration date here. So you could use 1 day, 1 week, 30 days, 60 days, or a custom date. Now this is really useful if you need to grant a user additional permissions just while someone else is on holiday, just so they can take over their workload. So we're just going to cancel out of that now. Now, if you have multiple permission sets, it might be quite time consuming to keep adding them to users. But what you could do is you could create a permission set group. So a permission set group is just a group of permission sets. And to do that, you just go to permission set groups, you create a new permission set group. So we'll just call this test. You'd hit save. And then what you could do is start adding in those permission sets. So you go into permission sets there, and you could add whatever permission sets you want into that permission set group. Now, this is really powerful because it can save you a lot of time, a lot of administrative time, because you can just assign them as you want. But what happens if you create a permission set group and one of those permission sets grants a permission that you don't want to be granted, say the delete accounts? Well, what you could do is you would use what's called a muting permission set. So you'd select muting permission set, you'd hit new, and then you could create whatever you wanted it to be. So for ours, we're going to say again that we want to mute, so we want to cancel out that ability to delete accounts. So if we go to object settings this time, and we go to account, and we hit edit, what you'll see here is that we now have this mute here, this button for mute. And this would just make sure that no permissions are granted for the account object with any of the permission sets. So it mutes, it cancels out any permissions granted by any of the other permission sets in that permission set group. You'll want to be really familiar with best practices around profiles and permission sets. So make sure you spend your time and you really understand them. We have covered an awful lot of ground in this video, and we've only just scratched the surface of what you need to know for the configuration and setup section of the admin exam. I know that when I studied for my exam, I felt really overwhelmed. I even tried using some resources other than Trailhead, but they didn't work for me. The video lessons that I was trying to use were slow, they were boring, and they seemed to take ages to get to the point. And then the slides, well, they were even more boring, they seemed to go on forever and ever, and they were just really unengaging. That's why I created Salesforce Certified. I've created a resource that I wish that I had when I was starting out. It cuts through all of the noise and all of the waffle, and it teaches you what you need to know quickly, easily, and in a much more engaging and entertaining way. There are clear, concise video lessons, quick and easy to use cheat sheets, and realistic mock exams that prepare you for the real thing. So, if you are looking for a course that's going to save you time, it's going to save you money, and it's going to give you the best possible chance of passing the certification exam, then head to Salesforce Certified. I've helped over 30,000 students, and I plan on helping a lot more. I'll provide a link in the description for you. I'm going to be continuing these videos of breaking down what you need to know. So make sure that you like and subscribe. And if you know anyone that would benefit from this video, please share it with them. I'll see you in the next one.